Before we start, answer this one question in the comments, because it matters more than you think. Have you ever felt something coming before it happened? A phone call, bad news, a sudden silence in the air. Because according to classified military leaks and erased testimonies, that feeling isn't imagination, it's a warning system that's being deliberately shut down. Tonight's story isn't about a weapon you can see. It's about something far worse, a technology designed to erase perception itself. Weapons that don't hide because they exist in the gaps between what humans can sense. And at the center of it all is an elderly Native American man known only as Thomas Blackfeather, a figure tied to missing hunters, classified research, a congressman in a coma, and a final warning that keeps getting deleted from the internet. Here's what I want you to do right now. Comment yes if you've ever felt a moment where time, sound, or awareness seemed to pause. Comment no if you've never experienced anything like that. Don't overthink it, just answer. Because by the end of this video, you might realize the silence you felt before was never empty. And once you notice it, you can't unhear it. And yeah, I want to know your profession, your age, and where you're watching from, because I believe you are the reason these hidden chapters of American history keep coming to light. You may want to subscribe at the end of this video if you want more stories like this, because there are forces that never wanted this one told. So yeah, my bad. Enough talk. Let's begin. Okay, so the year was 1943. While America's attention was fixed on brutal battles in Europe and the Pacific, a quieter, more secret war was unfolding at home. It never made the history books. No monuments, no medals. Just silence. Deep inside the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas, the military established a covert training site known as Camp Nighthawk. Officially, it didn't exist. Its purpose was unconventional warfare, defending against threats no one was allowed to admit were possible, and it recruited people who weren't ordinary soldiers. One of them was Thomas Blackfeather. Blackfeather was a 32-year-old Cherokee man from eastern Oklahoma, descended from a grandfather who had fought alongside Union forces during the Civil War. He wasn't recruited for strength or marksmanship alone. Military scientists believed he had something else, something they didn't fully understand. According to records from Camp Nighthawk, briefly declassified in 2011 before being locked away again just 3 weeks later, Blackfeather possessed what they called enhanced sensory perception. In simpler terms, he could feel danger coming. Captain James Whitaker, the camp's commanding officer, documented the first incident that made everyone uneasy. On April 7, 1943, during a routine patrol exercise before sunrise, Blackfeather suddenly became agitated. When questioned, he said he could smell gunpowder and hot metal drifting from the northern ridge. There were no drills scheduled there, no weapons testing, nothing. 3 hours later, an unidentified aircraft violated restricted airspace and dropped 3 practice munitions on that exact ridge. Radar never picked it up. At first, the incident was dismissed as a navigational mistake by an Allied training flight, but OSS investigators later noted something disturbing. The aircraft didn't match any known Allied design. That's when Dr. Elena Weiss stepped in. As Camp Nighthawk's chief research psychologist, she began systematically studying Blackfeather. Her notes, partially recovered from a Tulsa storage facility decades later, paint a chilling picture. Blackfeather could detect incoming artillery or aircraft 2 to 4 hours before arrival. More unsettling, he could identify different munitions by scent alone, even distinguishing their country of origin. Blindfolded, he was given soil samples from various battlefields. He correctly identified which areas had seen combat with 93% accuracy. What started as scientific curiosity quickly became a national security concern. By late 1943, intelligence reports warned that enemy forces were testing a new way of inserting agents into American territory, so-called ghost teams using experimental stealth to bypass radar and patrols. In response, Blackfeather and 3 other Native American scouts were formed into a secret reconnaissance unit known as Phantom Watch. Their first mission took place along the Oregon coastline in January 1944. For decades, historians argued over whether Japan ever set foot on the American mainland, but fragments from Operation Coastal Shield confirm at least 17 separate enemy landings between 1942 and 1945. One of the few first-hand accounts comes from Frank Delgado, a radio operator with Phantom Watch. His journal was discovered during a home renovation in 2002. In an entry dated February 12, 1944, Delgado wrote that Blackfeather woke the unit at midnight. He said he could smell them coming, not just gunpowder, but sea salt, diesel fuel, and something bitter like almond oil. The lieutenant wanted confirmation. Blackfeather insisted they were less than 2 hours away. They mobilized anyway. At exactly 0200 hours, a miniature submarine surfaced offshore and released a 5-man team. They walked straight into an ambush. One carried a waterproof case filled with radio equipment and what appeared to be chemical agents. As the case was opened, Delgado wrote that Blackfeather simply nodded. That bitter almond smell? He'd detected it from 15 miles away, hours before the submarine surfaced. The official report said the enemy was intercepted using reliable intelligence, nothing more. The source of that intelligence remained classified. As Blackfeather's reputation grew, so did the attention from darker corners of the government. In March 1944, Phantom Watch was removed from normal military command and placed under a shadow division of the OSS, known only as Section 17. From that point on, records nearly disappear. What we know comes from David Running Bear, another Phantom Watch member, who recorded an oral history in 1998, shortly before his death. According to him, the experiments escalated fast. They weren't satisfied with Thomas sensing danger. They wanted to know if he could track individuals, feel someone's presence from hundreds of miles away. They injected him with compounds, some derived from native plants, others entirely synthetic. Sometimes he'd be unresponsive for days. Other times, he stayed awake for 72 hours straight. And the changes were obvious. His abilities grew stronger, but he was losing himself. He began speaking in riddles, blending Cherokee and English. He stared at people and calmly told them when and how they would die. He predicted 3 attacks days before they happened, down to the number of enemy soldiers and their weapons. Command was thrilled, but those who knew him could see something was breaking. By June 1944, while Allied forces stormed Normandy, Phantom Watch was sent to an undisclosed location in New Mexico. The mission remains heavily redacted, but Running Bear said it involved a suspected enemy installation near a small desert town called Truth or Consequences. The moment they crossed into New Mexico, Blackfeather changed. He said the air tasted like lightning and ash. He said there was a wound in the world ahead of them, something leaking that didn't belong here. Officers assumed he meant an enemy lab. 3 days later, Blackfeather collapsed. Blood poured from his nose and ears as he screamed a phrase in Cherokee that roughly translated to, "They're tearing the sun open." The date was July 16, 1944, exactly 1 year before the first atomic bomb was detonated at the Trinity test site, less than 100 miles from where Blackfeather had his breakdown. Lieutenant Colonel Raymond Weber, a liaison to the Manhattan Project, made only one mention of the incident in his personal diary. Disturbing report from S7 field team. Native assets somehow detected preparations. Scientists assure me this is impossible. asset to be transferred to special holding for duration. And just like that, Thomas Blackfeather vanished from the record. For nearly 7 months, Thomas Blackfeather vanished from every official record. When his name finally resurfaced in February 1945, he was no longer attached to Phantom Watch. Instead, he had been quietly transferred to a classified installation in Nevada known only as Facility Echo. Dr. Elenina Weiss was reassigned there as well, and what she observed unsettled her more than anything before. Blackfeather's range had expanded beyond anything they'd measured. He no longer sensed danger hours in advance. He was detecting conflicts weeks, even months before they existed. When shown a map, he could point to future battlefields with eerie precision. Even more disturbing, he claimed he could now smell death on people themselves. Not before battle, on individuals. He could identify which soldiers would not survive their next deployment. Military leadership immediately grasped the tactical value. Internal memos reveal that Blackfeather was used to quietly screen special operations units headed for the Pacific. Teams were reshuffled at the last minute without explanation. Captain Howard Mitchell, who led one of those units, later wrote to his brother about the experience. They brought in a native man the day before we shipped out, had him walk down the line looking each of us in the eye. After that, 6 men were suddenly reassigned. Command called it tactical redistribution, but word spread fast that the Indian could smell death on a man. Here's the part I can't ignore, Richard. Every single replacement they sent us came home alive. Every one. In an operation where 42% didn't. As the war in the Pacific intensified, Blackfeather's abilities were pushed even harder. Admiral Chester Nimitz reportedly consulted maps Blackfeather had marked with predicted Japanese naval movements before finalizing the Okinawa campaign. Those predictions proved accurate to within 20 nautical miles, far beyond the reach of conventional intelligence. But the cost was becoming obvious. Medical records from Facility Echo show Blackfeather was hospitalized 3 times in March 1945 for severe nervous exhaustion and sensory overload. Dr. Weiss recorded her concern in blunt terms. The subject reports he can no longer turn off his perceptions. He smells death everywhere. Not only deaths that are coming, but deaths that have already happened, and deaths that will happen in the future. He describes the land itself as saturated with endings. She recommended an immediate reduction in his workload. No one listened. As planning advanced for the invasion of mainland Japan, Operation Downfall, Blackfeather was assigned one final task: identify which landing zones would result in the fewest American casualties. For 72 hours, he studied detailed maps of Japan's coastline without sleep. He barely ate. Witnesses said he muttered continuously in Cherokee, marking beaches with colored pins. When he finished, he looked up at the assembled generals and spoke just one sentence. "It doesn't matter which beaches you choose. I smell ash and shadow over all of Japan. Something worse than gunpowder is coming." 3 weeks later, the atomic bomb fell on Hiroshima. Marie Blackhawk, a Cherokee nurse assigned to Facility Echo, left one of the most haunting accounts of Blackfeather during those final days. He wasn't the same person anymore. His eyes had changed, his pupils permanently dilated, like he was staring into some endless darkness. He told me he could smell death on everyone now, even the generals. Some would die soon, others later, but the scent was on all of them. When news came about the bomb, he didn't react. He just nodded. Now the whole world will smell like gunpowder. On August 15, 1945, the day Japan announced its surrender, Thomas Blackfeather disappeared from Facility Echo. The official report claimed he escaped during a brief lapse in security. David Running Bear told a different story. They were never going to let him go. He knew too much. He'd seen too deeply into what they planned for the world after the war. So he walked into the desert, just walked away. The military searched extensively. They never found a body. In October 1945, Thomas Blackfeather was declared missing, presumed dead. Phantom Watch was disbanded, its records sealed under national security protocols. But the story didn't end there. Between 1947 and 1963, there were at least 11 confirmed sightings of a man matching Blackfeather's description across the American Southwest. The pattern was always the same. A solitary native man would appear shortly before a major crisis, warn a handful of people, then vanish. In April 1962, months before the Cuban Missile Crisis, Sheriff Dale Patterson of Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, reported meeting an elderly native man who told him to stock his fallout shelter. "The air's starting to smell like the end of the world," the man said. "You've got about 6 months before the gunpowder is everywhere." Then he walked into the hills. Later that year, when the world nearly burned over Cuba, Patterson couldn't forget the warning. The most compelling evidence came in 1972. Dr. Weiss, now retired from government service and running a private parapsychology research facility in Colorado, received a handwritten letter postmarked from Sedona, Arizona. The handwriting, English mixed with Cherokee, was instantly recognizable. It contained just 3 lines. "The scent is changing. They found something in the ice that should have stayed buried. Look north when the ravens gather." 3 weeks later, an international expedition in the Arctic uncovered microorganisms frozen for more than 250,000 years. What the public never learned was that several researchers soon developed a strange respiratory illness. The outbreak was quietly contained, and new biohazard protocols were created. Dr. Weiss went to Sedona, spending 6 weeks searching for any trace of Blackfeather. Her journal describes an encounter at a remote trading post outside the city. The elderly Navajo proprietor recognized the handwriting immediately. "Ghost walker," he said. "He passes through every few years, never stays long." According to the old man, Ghost Walker could smell the shape of time itself. He only appeared when the path of the world was about to split. The last time was before the Cuban Missile Crisis. Before that, just ahead of the Korean War. The old man believed Blackfeather wasn't predicting disasters. He was trying to stop them. By the late 1970s and 80s, sightings became rare. The final documented encounter occurred in October 1989 when a Yellowstone ranger reported being approached by an ancient Native American. He warned that the walls between worlds were thinning, that old enemies were about to lay down their weapons, but new ones were rising. 1 month later, the Berlin Wall fell. After that, the trail went cold. Most researchers believe Thomas Blackfeather, who would have been in his late 70s by then, had finally passed away. But some still believe you can't kill a man who learned how to smell the future. The story might have ended there, buried forever in sealed files and classified footnotes, if not for what happened after September 11th. In early October 2001, as the U.S. military prepared for operations in Afghanistan, a quiet security breach occurred at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Military police responded to an alarm in a restricted archive wing, one that housed classified historical records. Inside the records room, they found something no protocol had prepared them for: an elderly Native American man. He was standing calmly among open file boxes labeled Operation Phantom Watch. When guards confronted him, the man reportedly smiled and said, almost amused, "Just checking if they've learned anything since my time." Before anyone could react, the lights across the facility flickered and went out. 30 seconds later, when emergency power came back online, the man was gone. The security footage from that night was immediately classified, but 3 MPs who were present later gave nearly identical accounts. One of them, Master Sergeant Paul Davidson, described the intruder as impossibly old, at least 90, but moving with the ease of someone decades younger. What stayed with him most were the eyes, completely black. Not pupils, not shadows, black, like staring into deep space. Davidson said the man spoke to him briefly before vanishing. "The gunpowder scent is different now," he told him. "Electronic, like ozone and burning silicon. War's changing its skin, but death smells the same." After the incident, a directive from an unnamed intelligence agency ordered a full review of every remaining Phantom Watch document. Most were destroyed under the expanded post-9/11 security rules, but not all. Some were transferred into a new black budget initiative under a fresh code name, Ancestral Recognition. In 2015, Dr. Jason Martinez, a former DARPA researcher, gave limited testimony to a private research foundation. He claimed to have worked on ancestral recognition between 2003 and 2008. According to Martinez, the goal was simple and disturbing. They were trying to rebuild Phantom Watch for modern warfare. The theory was that certain people, especially those with deep indigenous ancestry, might possess latent sensory abilities capable of detecting threats that modern surveillance couldn't see. Thousands were screened. Particular focus was placed on Native American veterans who showed extraordinary situational awareness in combat. At first, results looked promising. 17 candidates tested far above baseline. 3 demonstrated what analysts labeled predictive threat assessment, not on black feathers level, but statistically undeniable. In simulated ports, they identified which sealed shipping containers held explosives with 70% accuracy, even when the explosives were inert. Field tests followed. In Iraq and Afghanistan, reconnaissance teams incorporating these enhanced sensors reportedly identified multiple IED placements before conventional methods caught anything. Then, in 2006, everything changed. Martinez described one subject, a Lakota former Force Recon Marine, who began showing abilities eerily similar to those in the Black Feather files. He could sense ambushes hours in advance. He described disturbances in the air along patrol routes. Most unsettling of all, he could identify which civilians were affiliated with insurgent networks simply by standing near them. Signals intelligence later confirmed his accuracy at 94%. But the cost was brutal. The subject developed migraines, insomnia, and eventually visual and auditory hallucinations. He claimed he could see death clinging to people before operations, just like Black Feather. The parallels were too exact to ignore. Martinez believed they weren't creating something new. They were reopening something old, something humans were never meant to perceive. In January 2007, during a mission near the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, the subject went AWOL. Before disappearing, he left a handwritten note in his quarters. "He found me, the old man who walks between worlds. He says we're being used to smell the wrong enemy. The real war hasn't started yet." Shortly after, Martinez was removed from the program. Ancestral recognition was officially terminated in late 2008. Officially. Martinez believes the work never stopped, only changed names. The abilities were too valuable, especially as warfare shifted from open battlefields to invisible conflicts. Through back channels, he heard they pivoted from humans to machines, trying to build technology that could replicate these abilities without breaking the mind. That claim lines up with a series of redacted Pentagon budget items between 2009 and 2015, tied to something called Project Bloodhound. described only as biomimetic threat detection systems. The project received more than $300 million in funding, then vanished. Even darker are the missing persons cases from the same period. Investigative journalist Sarah White documented at least 27 disappearances from reservation lands, mostly young Native men between 18 and 25. Many had recently been approached by individuals claiming to recruit for special reconnaissance training. In 2017, an anonymous whistleblower uploaded a cache of classified documents to secure servers. Among them was a partial research summary titled Enhanced Sensory Acquisition Program. It referenced Phantom Watch directly. One passage stood out. Historical subject B7 represents an outlier case of natural ability amplified through unknown means. Current subjects demonstrate approximately 30 to 40% of B7 baseline capability. Neurological side effects increase with enhancement. Breakthrough may require locating original subject or direct descendants. That meant someone, recently, was still searching for Thomas Blackfeather, or his bloodline. Given his age, the focus on descendants suggested a belief that his ability wasn't learned, it was inherited. The most recent chapter came from somewhere no one expected. In April 2022, during a routine security audit at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, an administrator discovered an unauthorized access point inside the Quantum Research Division. Someone had been siphoning data from a classified program studying whether human intention could create measurable subatomic disturbances. The breach was traced to a remote server inside the Navajo Nation. When federal agents raided the location, they found an abandoned trailer. Inside, advanced computing equipment and a single handwritten note. Machines will never smell what's coming. Some warnings can only be carried by the wind. In 2023, during a closed academic symposium, Dr. Emily Redbird, a Cherokee quantum physicist, offered a chilling interpretation. According to attendees, she said the government's decades-long obsession with Blackfeather was based on a mistake. They thought he was a weapon. He wasn't. He was a warning system. And the fact that he keeps appearing only before history's breakings means one thing: whatever he's trying to stop hasn't happened yet. Dr. Emily Redbird's interpretation changed everything. What if his ability was never about predicting the future in a fixed, unavoidable way, she asked during the symposium. What if individuals like Blackfeather could perceive something deeper, probability itself? The moment when possible futures begin collapsing into reality. In that framework, the scent of gunpowder wasn't mystical at all. It was the sensory translation of rising probability, conflict becoming inevitable. Quantum mechanics tells us that observation alters outcome. Redbird posed a more unsettling question. What if certain people can do more than observe probabilities? What if they can influence them? Seen this way, Thomas Blackfeather's 70-year disappearance looks different. Maybe he wasn't running from government exploitation. Maybe he was actively reshaping outcomes, intervening just enough to divert catastrophes he could sense forming. His appearances before history's breaking points may not have been predictions. They may have been attempts at prevention. Even today, unverified reports continue to surface. National park rangers in Glacier National Park have described encounters with a medicine man who warned them the Earth was developing a fever, trying to burn out what was harming it. Forest Service personnel in the Cascades recall an elderly Cherokee man telling them the sky would soon open in ways they didn't expect. And in July 2024, 3 hikers in Joshua Tree National Park independently reported meeting an ancient native man who stopped them on the trail and said, "The weapons have changed, but the scent hasn't. The next war won't smell like gunpowder. It'll smell like nothing at all." According to leaked intelligence assessments, analysts quietly compiled a map of these sightings. The pattern disturbed them. The encounters appeared to be moving steadily eastward. The most recent confirmed report placed the man, Blackfeather, or whoever now carries his name, less than 200 miles from Washington, D.C. So, what are we supposed to make of this? Was Thomas Blackfeather a genuine case of enhanced human perception, a carefully maintained military myth, or something stranger, something that doesn't fit inside our usual categories? Because of the secrecy surrounding Phantom Watch and everything that followed, definitive answers may never come. But if even a fraction of these accounts are true, they challenge what we think we know about human awareness and its limits. Perhaps the most unsettling possibility is this: Blackfeather's abilities were never supernatural. They were dormant, capacities that exist within all humans, dulled or suppressed by modern life. If that's true, then we move through a world filled with warnings we no longer sense, signs we no longer recognize, dangers we no longer smell until it's too late. Of course, there's a rational explanation. Intelligence agencies have long used legends of extraordinary operatives to mask advanced surveillance systems or elite human intelligence networks. Blackfeather could simply be a cover story, an elaborate myth protecting classified technology. But that explanation breaks down under scrutiny. It doesn't explain the consistency of sightings over 8 decades. It doesn't explain why strangers across generations describe the same man, the same warnings, the same presence. And it doesn't explain why a legend born in the 1940s refuses to stay buried. One detail, above all others, remains chilling. In David Running Bear's final interview before his death, he recalled the last words Blackfeather ever said to him. "I'll keep walking this land until the final battle comes, the one that makes all the others feel like practice. I'll know it's close when I can't smell it anymore." When the air goes clean, he said, that's when we should be afraid. As of this recording, there have been no confirmed sightings of Thomas Blackfeather for nearly 4 months, the longest silence since his disappearance in 1945. So, what does that mean? Has his impossible life finally ended? Or has something changed in what he perceives? Because those who claim to have seen him most recently say he no longer warns of gunpowder, only of a coming conflict that will smell like nothing at all. Look around. Strange lights above military installations, unexplained atmospheric events, sudden redeployments of elite units to remote regions, the acceleration of next-generation weapons designed to counter threats that have never been publicly named. Are these the opening moves of Blackfeather's final battle? The conflict he spent a lifetime trying to prevent? Or are we simply pattern-hungry, finding meaning where none exists? One thing is undeniable. Throughout history, those who heeded warnings, no matter how implausible, often survived. Skeptics didn't always get the same chance. Whatever the truth behind Thomas Blackfeather, his story reminds us that perception extends beyond what we're taught to trust. That wisdom doesn't always arrive through data or authority, but sometimes through voices we've forgotten how to hear. As we move through an increasingly unstable world, maybe the lesson isn't to fear the unknown, but to relearn how to sense it, to notice the silence before the storm, to recognize danger before it announces itself. Witnesses say that throughout his long journey, Blackfeather carried a small, worn Bible. Those who spoke with him said he believed that while he could smell danger approaching, only faith in God and Jesus Christ could truly protect against what waited beyond the horizon. The choice, as always, remains ours: to walk blindly forward or to cultivate a deeper awareness that might let us sense what's coming before it arrives. to smell the gunpowder on the wind, to hear the silence before the storm, to see the shadows stretching before nightfall. For Thomas Blackfeather, wherever he is, that awareness was both a blessing and a curse, a gift that saved lives and a burden that denied him peace. His story still drifts across America, from mountains to deserts to forests, a whisper carried by the wind. Sometimes the greatest dangers are the ones we can't yet perceive, and sometimes the most important warnings come from voices we've forgotten how to hear. The native sniper who could smell gunpowder before battle may have faded into legend, but the questions his existence raises are very much alive. In a world ruled by satellites, algorithms, and weapons of unimaginable power, perhaps the most valuable intelligence still comes from something ancient, human intuition, tuned to frequencies we've only begun to understand. And then, in December 2024, as winter settled over the Appalachian Mountains, a final report emerged. 3 hunters in West Virginia, experienced outdoorsmen, were tracking deer deep inside Monongahela National Forest when a sudden snowstorm forced them to seek shelter in an abandoned fire lookout tower. As the storm worsened, they noticed smoke rising from a cabin half a mile below them, a cabin that didn't appear on any map. 2 of the hunters went to investigate. What they found was later documented in sworn statements to local authorities and to representatives of an unidentified federal agency that arrived less than 24 hours later. The cabin was sparsely furnished but filled with advanced meteorological equipment. The walls were covered in maps marked with symbols resembling Cherokee syllabary. An elderly native man greeted them calmly as if he'd been expecting them. According to hunter Marcus Dawson, the man knew their names, knew a 3rd hunter was waiting in the tower, knew exactly when they'd left their trucks that morning, and before they left, he said only this: "You made it just in time. The wind's about to change." The old man said he'd been tracking strange weather patterns for months. This storm, he insisted, wasn't natural. He introduced himself only as Thomas and explained why he lived so far off the grid. According to him, the cabin sat at the crossing point of what he called sensitivity lines, places where shifts in Earth's electromagnetic field showed up before anywhere else. He showed the hunters his journals, dozens of them, every page packed with careful notes, atmospheric readings, hand-drawn charts stretching back decades. Thomas said the patterns were changing in ways he had never witnessed before. Dawson later said the air around the cabin felt wrong. There were moments when he couldn't smell anything at all, not gunpowder, not ozone, not even damp earth. Nothing. Just a hollow gap in the world's sensory field. The most unsettling moment came when Thomas unfolded a map of the eastern United States. Shaded regions spread across it like bruises. These were the dead zones, areas where senses failed. And the pattern wasn't random. Every zone centered on one of 5 major military installations connected to the newly formed Space Force. "These aren't just bases," James Whitfield later recalled Thomas saying. "They're blind spots, places where perception itself is being erased." Thomas claimed someone was learning how to operate in the gaps between what could be sensed, not hiding weapons, but hiding the idea of a weapon entirely. Before the hunters left, Thomas handed them a sealed envelope. He asked them to mail it once they reached civilization. The recipient was Dr. Emily Redbird at MIT. Federal agents later seized the envelope, but not before Dawson, a former Navy communications specialist, memorized its contents. He reconstructed the message from memory. "The blind spots are artificial. Weapons are being developed that exist outside the possibility of detection, not through stealth, but by operating between perceptual dimensions. The final conflict will not arrive with noise, It will arrive with silence, and the absence of warning will be the warning. 2 weeks later, satellite images showed the cabin was gone. Not destroyed, removed. No debris, no scorch marks, no sign it had ever existed. Soon after, both hunters began experiencing disturbing symptoms, identical to those reported in subjects from the Ancestral Recognition Program. Crushing migraines, heightened senses, and eventually, something worse: premonitions. Whitfield wrote in a private blog post, one that disappeared within hours, "I feel it now too, not as strong as he did, but it's there, a background hum. It changes right before something happens. Yesterday, I knew my neighbor's dog would bark 30 seconds before it did. This morning, I woke up knowing my sister would call with bad news. When the phone rang, I already knew her car had been totaled. I never had this before meeting him." In January 2025, both men were admitted to Walter Reed Medical Center for what officials described as evaluation for traumatic brain injury caused by environmental exposure. They were never seen again. Their families' requests for information were denied under classified national security exemptions. Dr. Emily Redbird soon became the next mystery. In March 2025, she abruptly resigned from MIT and vanished from public life. Her final research paper, submitted days before her disappearance, contained a strange acknowledgement. To T.B., whose understanding of sensory dimensions beyond conventional physics continues to illuminate the path forward. The paper explored how biological systems might detect quantum field disturbances before machines could, essentially a scientific model for precognition. The research was immediately classified. Then came the whistleblowers. Multiple military sources began describing a weapons program known as Blind Horizon. According to them, these systems weren't merely invisible, they existed partially outside normal space-time until activation. One engineer described them as weapons that couldn't be detected because, in a sense, they weren't fully there yet. In April 2025, Congressman William Standing Bear raised concerns during a closed House Armed Services Committee session. Leaked minutes show he directly referenced the Black Feather case, asking whether military research was attempting to build weapons invisible even to enhanced human perception. The response, heavily redacted, contained a single chilling line: "Ultimate security lies in weapons that cannot be anticipated, even by those with precognitive abilities." 2 days later, Standing Bear's office was raided. The next morning, he was found unconscious in his home, hospitalized for what was described as a severe cerebrovascular event. He remains in a medically induced coma. Since then, strange reports have spread across the country: electromagnetic anomalies, animals migrating in impossible patterns, people describing brief moments where sound vanishes, smells disappear, or time itself seems to pause. In August 2025, a retired Air Force sergeant in Arizona posted a video claiming he'd met Thomas Blackfeather at a remote gas station near the Nevada border. The video was scrubbed from every platform within hours. Those who saw it say the elderly Native American man looked straight into the camera and said only, "The silence is spreading. When you can no longer hear the warning drums, that's when they'll come." The sergeant was detained the next day for alleged security violations. His family has not heard from him since. So what is Thomas Blackfeather? A single man who somehow lived far beyond a normal lifespan? A lineage passing the warning from one guardian to the next? Or something else entirely? Maybe even a counterintelligence construct meant to distract from darker truths? Whatever the answer, the legend has evolved. The native sniper who could smell gunpowder before battle is no longer just a story. He's a symbol of humanity's instinctive understanding that the most dangerous threats are the ones we cannot detect. In an era of AI, quantum warfare, and weapons beyond physical limits, perhaps we need voices like his more than ever. His warning has never changed. The greatest danger isn't what we can sense coming, it's what arrives without warning. The battle with no sound, the weapon with no trace. Those who encountered him say he carried a worn Bible everywhere. Inside it, he claimed, was the only real defense. "Put your faith in Jesus Christ," he told the hunters. "When the silent weapons come and the world fades around you, only something beyond the physical will anchor your soul." As night falls across America, some people listen more closely to the silence. They test the air for scents that should be there but aren't. They watch the spaces between shadows, waiting for the footsteps of an old Cherokee warrior who walks the boundary between worlds, and his final alert remains unchanged: beware the battle that has no scent at all. So now the question isn't whether Thomas Blackfeather was real. The question is this: if the warnings are disappearing, if the air is going silent, if the next conflict won't announce itself at all, would you even know it's already started? Blackfeather believed the most dangerous moment isn't the explosion, it's the moment before it. When nothing smells wrong, when nothing feels off, when everything seems normal. And that's what I want to ask you. Comment one thing below. Do you believe Blackfeather was a real man, a government legend, or a warning humanity was never meant to understand? Or, tell me honestly, have you ever felt a moment where the world went quiet for no reason? Don't scroll past this. Your answer matters more than you think. Because if enough people are sensing the same silence, then maybe the warning drums aren't gone. Maybe we've just forgotten how to hear them. If this story unsettled you, share it with someone who trusts their intuition. And if you want more stories like this, stories that feel uncomfortably close to reality, subscribe. Until next time, stay alert. Listen to the silence.